footballers getting bans and suspensions isn't particularly shocking. A red card typically results in a 1 or 3 game suspension, and even the tallying up of yellow cards can see you banned temporarily in most competitions. Those are par for the course, but what is a little rarer are bans of several months or even years. It is exactly those more draconian and severe bans and suspensions that we are interested in here, as we look at the 7 longest bans/suspensions in football. I should point out, I'm only including temporary bans, no lifetime bans, so there'll be no Esmond Million, Keith Williams, or Brian Phillips. Here are the 7 longest bans/suspensions in football history. Eric Cantona and Rio Ferdinand, 8 months. There's nothing to split Eric Cantona and Rio Ferdinand's 8-month bans from football, so they're included as a joint entry in 7th place. Funnily enough, both Cantona and Ferdinand played for Manchester United at the times of their punishments, Cantona's coming in January 1995 when he infamously kung fu kicked a Crystal Palace supporter in the crowd, whilst Ferdinand's came in December 2003 after he missed a drugs test the previous September. Ferdinand's suspension saw him miss half a Premier League season, an FA Cup final, and Euro 2004, but Cantona's also saw him receive criminal charges, so he takes this one for us. 8 out of 10, Eric. Mark Bosnich, 9 months. From skipping a drugs test to taking but failing one, Mark Bosnich's long-time struggles with cocaine addiction have been well documented. The Aussie shot stopper, who was signed twice by Sir Alex Ferguson at Man United, reached a new nadir in 2002 whilst contracted to Chelsea. The test showed that Bosnich was positive for cocaine use, which he claimed to have been the result of his drink being spiked. The FA weren't convinced, and Bosnich was handed a backdated 9-month suspension. He became a recluse for a number of years following the ban, before a brief return to the sport 5 years later. Diego Maradona, 15 months. The longest suspension ever handed out for failing a drugs test, Diego Maradona was no stranger to the odd indiscretion during his career, and indeed since. Quite possibly the most naturally gifted and unplayable footballer to have ever lived in his prime, Maradona's lengthy suspension came in 1994. 8 years on from inspiring Argentina to World Cup glory, surely El Diego couldn't do it again. In Argentina's opener, he scored a brilliant, fierce left-footed shot into the top corner as Greece were beaten 4-0. He celebrated that goal like a rabid dog though, and he failed a so-called random drugs test soon after for cocaine use. He was sent home and suspended from football for 15 months, and returning briefly at Boca Juniors before retiring. Ibrahim Akin, Serdar Kulbic, and Umit Karan, 2 years. Now we're talking. Turkish football was rocked by a wide-scale corruption scandal back in 2011, which investigated match fixing and briberies. Ibrahim Akin of Istanbul Başakşehir, Serdar Kulbic of Gençlerbirliği, and Umit Karan of Eskişehirspor were the 3 players handed the heftiest bans from the sport. All 3 had been capped by Turkey a few years before the scandal, and whilst Karan was initially suspended for 3 years, that was later reduced, meaning the trio were all banned for 2 years. Akin now plays in the 2nd tier of Turkish football, Kulbic plays in the 3rd tier, and Karan retired following his punishment and is now managing North Macedonia. Apologies for some of those pronunciations. 6 players, 4 years. 7 players in total were banned by the FA for life back in 1915 when authorities investigated a serious betting scandal. Enoch West, Sandy Turnbull, Arthur Whaley, Jackie Sheldon, Tom Miller, Bob Purcell, and Thomas Fairfowl were the 7 in question, thought to have rigged a game between Manchester United and Liverpool on Good Friday 1915. Although initially banned for life, 6 of the players' bans were overturned in 1919 after 4 years when the Football League returned following World War I, including that of Sandy Turnbull, despite the fact he had died in the conflict. David Lane, Peter Swan, and Tony Kay, 7 to 8 years. Another British betting scandal, this time in 1964, Sheffield Wednesday trio David Lane, Peter Swan, and Tony Kay were all found guilty of match fixing after Wednesday lost 2-0 to Ipswich Town. All 3 were handed lifetime bans, but they appealed them when the FA changed their rules in 1971. The trio saw their bans overturned, 1 in 1971 and 2 in 1972, meaning they served 7 and 8 year suspensions respectively. Swan, who was the pick of the 3 in terms of talent, briefly returned to Wednesday before helping Bury to promotion. Kay never returned, whilst Lane made just 4 appearances for Hereford United. Enoch West, 30 years. You may recall in that 1915 betting scandal that 7 players were handed lifetime bans, but 6 of them were overturned in 1919 after World War I came to an end, including one that had died in the conflict. Well, the one player whose ban wasn't overturned in 1919 was Enoch West, a forward who scored 80 goals in 5 seasons at Manchester United. He always pleaded his innocence, but it wasn't until 30 years later, in 1945, ironically at the end of World War II in his case, that his ban was overturned. Aged 59 when his suspension was finally revoked, West, unsurprisingly, didn't return to professional football. I do apologise that we only have one image of West, as you may have guessed. That's it for today's 7. Thanks for watching, give us a like if you enjoyed the video, and obviously make sure you're subscribed to HITC Sevens. Also, if you're watching on mobile, just try tapping your screen now. Apparently that is sometimes required to bring up our little subscribe button and a couple of other videos that YouTube thinks you might enjoy.